Hi, welcome to Excel for Educators, Episode 1. My name is Alicia Parker, and I'll be your host. Today, I'm going to show you the basics for how to get a data sheet set up for easy use. We're going to wrap text, adjust column sizes, and freeze panes. I'll be demonstrating these on a Windows 10 computer using Excel 2016. If you're on a different operating system or a slightly older version, much of this should look the same for you. So, let's get started. This dataset is a randomly generated dataset that has data an educator might be familiar with. Oftentimes, data is shared in an Excel or CSV file, and upon opening it, the data is not easy to read. The first thing I do when I open a data file is highlight row 1. You can do that easily by clicking on the number 1 here on the far left. Next, I go to the Home menu, which you're probably on if you just opened the file. And in the Alignment section, I click on Wrap Text. If you're on a small computer screen and don't see the Wrap Text label, look for the symbol that shows the letter C being pointed into the second row. Hovering over this symbol will give you a description of the Wrap Text feature. Clicking on this makes the headings much easier to read. The next thing I do is move a few icons over in this menu and click on the Align Top symbol. This moves my text to the top of the cell. For me, it's just easier to read the titles this way. And finally, to get the setup just the way I like it, I select all my columns by clicking the triangle here between the column and row titles. Then I put my cursor between any two columns to get the symbol that has a right arrow and a left arrow. And I double click. Excel automatically sizes each column to the minimum width I need to see all the text within the column. This saves me the time of having to resize each individual column. Now, having the column headers set up nicely so I can read them is extremely helpful. But one of the most aggravating things about spreadsheets is scrolling down and scrolling over and not being able to see what column or row you're in. For educators, often you are looking at long lists of students and data about each individual student. It's really hard to align your data if you don't know about the freeze panes feature. If I scroll down to this student and scroll over to this score, it is easy to lose my place and not know if I'm looking at the right student or if I've remembered correctly what number this represents. So Excel has a feature that can freeze the top row or the first column or a combination of those. So let's take a look at each option. Freeze panes is located in the View menu and in the Windows section. When you click on Freeze panes, there are 3 different choices. We're actually going to start with the second option, Freeze Top Row. Did you notice when I selected that, the line separating row 1 from row 2 got a little bit darker? That's a visual symbol that the top row is now frozen. As I scroll down, now I can see my column headers. What a difference! I can undo this feature by clicking Unfreeze Panes in the same menu option. Excel freezes whatever top row is visible at the time you choose to freeze the top row. So if I've scrolled down in my spreadsheet and realize I need my column headers, I can't just select Freeze Top Row, or else the top row that's visible will be frozen. And that's unlikely to be helpful. I actually need to scroll all the way back up to the top of my data set before choosing Freeze Top Row. Okay, so now let's see if we can freeze a first column. In this data sheet, our first column is student IDs. Let's go back to the Freeze Panes menu, and this time we'll choose the third option, Freeze First Column. Now, when I scroll to the right, The information contained in the first column stays frozen. Even though I sometimes use freeze top row or freeze first column, most of the time I actually want to freeze a combination of rows and columns. In this data set, our first column is student ID. Typically, I want to freeze student names because I don't have IDs memorized. So I need to strategically select a cell that tells Excel to freeze everything above my selection and everything to the left of my selection. If I want to freeze both first and last name, as well as the top row, can you figure out which cell I need to select? The answer is E2. If my cursor is in E2, then when I choose Freeze Panes, columns A through D will freeze, which contains my student names, and row 1 will freeze, which contains my row headers. Did you notice two darker lines appeared? One line separating rows 1 and 2, and another line separating columns D and E. Now, take a look at what happens when I scroll down and over. When people first discover this, it's often a moment of life-changing joy. So if that's you right now, feel free to pause this video and celebrate. You can always remove freeze panes if needed by returning to the menu and selecting Unfreeze Panes. I hope these tips make you more efficient with Excel. Check out my additional Excel for Educator videos for more help on using Excel. Until next time, this is Alicia Parker with Excel for Educators.